Hello friends and gamers, and welcome to the Fortress. My name is Jinx, and today I'm very pleased and proud and happy to announce that I am starting a brand new series dealing with a board game called Napoleon in Europe. An epic game of grand strategy published by Eagle Games and designed and created by Glenn Drover. This game is one of my absolute favorites. It is brilliant conceptually. It has a few flaws, but I just absolutely still love it. It's a fantastic game, but it's big enough that it's hard to find people to play it with. But I just absolutely love this game. It is absolutely amazing. The artwork for the cover here, at the very least, is by Keith Rocco, and I find it is absolutely stunning and draws me right in. Like the frame of it, right? The frame of it, you're drawn into this just by the artistic work behind it. You're drawn into this action. You're drawn to these faces, to this gentleman here. You're just zoomed right in into that idea. It's Michelangelo-like in the regards like the Last Supper, where your eye is drawn to that central character there. And in that, you see they broke down the door into this fortress, and the action just kind of unfolds from it. It leads your eye down this line just by the intensity of the movement down this way to this gentleman firing the rifle, musket, as well as this guy being battered down. These people behind the door still vainly trying to hold them back. Just absolutely brilliant artwork. I know it's a bit odd to start with this, but I find this artwork just draws me right in, and I wish more board game designers would employ this level of, well, for me, it's artistry behind this. Just absolutely brilliant. Now, I don't know if it's a recreation from an old master or not. I have this sneaking suspicion, actually it's guaranteed here, by Keith Rocco. It is by this gentleman here. So in 96, maybe that's the year he painted it. So 1996, just gorgeous. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Now, let's get back to the nuts and bolts of this board game, what it all entails. So, the box itself is fairly large. Now, not as large as some more modern games, because modern games, they are heftier, and they also have kind of means with which you can stack things into for the most part. So it's a hefty kind of book. The artist's work here kind of imitates the cover art. Just absolutely gorgeous in my opinion. And yeah, just a good book, good solid box for what it's worth and for what's needed. Brilliant video. We're going to deal with graphics. We're going to deal with the nuts and bolts, the bits and pieces, the miniatures, the map, the player aids, not the rulebook in the sense of digging through the rulebook, but more the artistic quality behind the rulebook, what it entails, what it encompasses. And then from then, the future episodes might deal with the rules themselves or certain features, and we'll kind of wind the whole series up with suggestions of improvements that the community has offered through different kind of expansions to attempt to kind of make it the better game or make it a greater game. I'm not trying to cast any shade on Glenn Drover, not whatsoever. I really enjoy this game. It does have its own issues, of course, and so the community is just loved the game so much that they want to put more into it and make it just all the better. Build upon the shoulders of that giant Glenn Drover. Now, I'm singing the high praises of Glenn Drover because I really like what he has to offer. I've bought this game. It's coming this Saturday. Used, but I'm really looking forward to it. And this game as well has been really on my radar for a long time. So I'm super happy to have acquired these used somewhere. And so yeah, I absolutely love it. Forewarning, when I do these videos, when I do in-depth reviews of anything, I can be opinionated and oftentimes critical. Now, despite all that, there is a reason I'm going to pour this amount of effort into this thing, because I like it. So I may suggest improvements and stuff, but at the end of the day, that's just one man's opinion that may be flawed, and I hope to not share overly much in my opinions. Okay, let's go on to what we actually are looking at here. We've gone over what the future will hold for this game, for this series, and now let's dive into the map itself. Now, the map itself is artistic creation by Paul Niemeyer. I believe I pronounced that right. Paul Niemeyer, or Meyer maybe, Niemeyer. And it is, so he does the work on the artist, not just the cover, no, sorry, he didn't do the cover art, but the game board artwork. So he does all this game board artwork. Now, I like the game board artwork quite a bit. In each kind of section you have over here. You have France, Spain. These are your kind of domestic areas. They have a more technical name for it, but basically a place where you can park your units if, you know, whatever, for whatever reason. It's just like a safe place, a safe place in this troubled world. And so that's what that's all about. Yeah, that's the idea there. It has your flag yeah, anyways, we'll go into that a little bit later as to what that all can be, but for right now, we don't need to dive into that too much. Safe to say, this is basically where your player will probably sit, just because that's where it's at. So you already have a few things kind of taken care of. Now, artistic work. Actually, you know what? Let's take a look at the back of the board, of the box, because that is worth touching on as well. Now, the back of the box, oops, tells you what's in there. It has miniatures here. What's all in there? 564 pieces. The figurines are roughly this size, which is not going to say anything to you. And the map looks something like this. Can't quite get it in screen. There we go. The map's something like this, right? And it'll also tell you what's here on the side. Now it says that sample player times are for basic game 1 to 3 hours, standard 2 to 4, advanced 2 to 5, and full campaign 6 to 20. It depends on the players and the amount of players and that kind of thing. Now they have the game features. They go over some of the game features behind this. Gigantic 46 by 36 inch game board representing Napoleon's time in Europe. 3 sets of rules, basic, advanced, and standard, I guess they called, and several different campaigns, hundreds of miniatures, etc. So that's what's that. Now there is on the map a lot of stuff going on. You have these areas and you have sea zones. Now I like a lot of what they offer here. They name this areas instead of giving them a number, which I like. I think that's adds more character into the game if you can name the sea zones. The areas are named as well. Here you have Morocco and Andalusia, and then certain territories are named after cities. So Western Spain, Andalusia, Catalonia, Madrid. Now, yeah, that's just the idea. Now this symbol here, it's not a roundel, it is printed on here. That represents your capital city. Now you will see that in the case of Spain, Spain is encompassed by like a blue color here along its outer borders, and with interior lines also blue, but the brown color in here is the same brown color you'll find right here, and I like that. I like that. Now there has been some criticism, not from me but from others, saying the map is way too orange or way too red. I don't mind whatsoever. I like the map quite a bit. I think it's like an old parchment you roll out here. Not ancient parchment, but you know, old enough parchment that's kind of got a tinge to it. And I also like the fact that they're not coloring the whole area one solid color. I like it quite a bit actually, just to highlight the area around it. The danger there is if you color it too solidly, it kind of leads this perception that it's always going to be yours. Now there's an exception to that, is here, because there is some tint behind it. Britain has tint behind it as well. Other nations quite a bit less so, but Britain does have this reddish tint behind it. Spain might have a little bit, and Ottomans do seem to have a little bit as well, but for the most part it's a solid a ring with the interior lines marked off as well. Now that's probably some sort of mentality behind why they made Britain different than the rest, but it's not offensive because it's somewhat of an orangey to red colors, not such transitory between a blue and a red color. I'll show you an example of what that could have looked like if they had done things differently. Where did I put the rule book now? There it is. So if they had done things differently, it would have looked something similar to this, which in my opinion is too dark, right? Like if you made it all solid there, you would end up having a blotch of yellow, a blotch of blue, a blotch of this, and blotch of that. And I think between those two options, I like this one more. I like it more. It just does something for me. It makes more sense to me. Now in each corner, like I said, you have the French player would sit here. Here you have the British player. Up there you have Napoleon sitting up there. I'm not sure who would sit up there, so maybe you'd have the British player there, then you have the Prussian player there, Russian player here, Ottoman here, Austrian here, and Spanish here. And that's what it would look like. So you have your territories are kind of homeland territories, which are encompassed by the darker blue or yellow or gray in this case. And then you have minor kind of neutral nations, minor nations, which are not encompassed by anything. They're just simply the brown, right? And that's the way it is. So that is what the map looks like. You also don't have them having any kind of capital territories. Here you have the capital territory, Vienna, with the roundel printed on the map, and same thing here with Paris, but Papal States and Rome does not have that. So that's a little clue as to what that is. You also have these anchors which represent your ports, so your ships can kind of reside and park in the ports as well. So that's the idea there. I like the artistic flourishes on the map with, you know, the battle between, looks like the Ottomans are winning against the Barbary pirates here. You have this gigantic sea monster chasing after this ship there. You have what looks to be, well, that's probably going to be well, that is the British, of course, but that's not. Is that the naval ensign for the British? Or the blue? It looks more like an Australian flag, right? Whereas this one here is more of the naval ensign with the white and the St. George's Cross with the Union Jack in the corner. So yeah, anyways. So yeah, that's kind of what we're at here with the artistic flourishes. And you have here Aquila Ludi, which I should have looked at what that means in Latin just for fun. But yeah, that's what Poseidon himself riding upon 2 seahorses as he maintains control across the Mediterranean. All right, here we have some other features. The Ottoman fleet. We have that wouldn't be, what would that be? That's not a Cossack. That would be Cossack is up here. This would be something else, just Turkish irregular cavalry, I suppose. Here you have your Hussar in Hungary and a few other odds and ends. So each major nation has a capital territory, except Russia has 2, St. Petersburg and Moscow. Britain has, of course, there. Prussia is in Berlin, where that stack of units are at, and that's basically what it's all at. So a little bit nice stuff going on here. Now, sea zones are separated by these lines, so I shouldn't need to state that. Now, there's also 3 different, so how many types of territories? There's 1, homeland. 2 is minor nations, and I suppose 3 would be capitals, and then you have these ones, the unnamed islands. Sardinia, what's this one? Corsica, Napoleon's own homeland, and then you have places like Crete and Cyprus over here. So in certain rule sets you can land there. In the basic rules you can't because you don't have a port. In the advanced rules you probably will be able to. I'll have to double check on that one. But basically they don't give you any production bonuses for capturing that territory. You just basically you can just basically land there, and that's about it. So that's the differences between the territories. Certain things can be a little bit less confusing, like for instance, Armenia, is it adjacent to Caucasus up here? Yes, it is. It is, even though it's, you know, going behind this gentleman over here, it is still possible. Another one is slightly confusing, is here it appears to have 2 borders between Egypt, this one, and then this one. You know, that's a little bit confusing as well. I think this is supposed to represent the Nile, and but yeah, that's a little bit confusing. It's not 2 territories, it's 1. So that must be an artistic little hiccup there. All right, what else do we have to add to the game? There's other stuff that's a little less obvious as well that you'd have to crack into the rules. Denmark and Sweden are adjacent. Bulgaria and Anatolia are adjacent. You can walk between those 2 ones. And I don't think Sicily and Naples are adjacent. So there's stuff like that that you'd have to crack into the rules. So that's something that the artist perhaps could have added a little marker in there, perhaps like a dotted line, boom, 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 saying that you can move between the 2, or a little arrow with pointed ends on each side, thereby saying you can't or cannot, right? And you would know by looking to say that Denmark has a crossing because it's got that little double-sided arrow, whereas Sicily, if it doesn't, then you can't. And I believe you can't in that case, I believe. I think that's the way that goes. All right. One thing I probably would have done is add more terrain features. Make Turkey mountainous. Because why not? Why not make Turkey mountainous? It makes more sense to me. Just because this is a political map. Like if Napoleon was unrolled this map in front of it, he would look at the political situation, but he's already familiar with the political situation. He already knows roughly how the map's going to be colored. I think it would be artistically nicer to have hills and mountains and maybe some, that kind of thing behind it. Just my 2 cents on the matter. But again, that's where money comes in. I'm coming at it from a consumer perspective, wanting more, more, more. And as the good book, the Bible says, the eyes, they never have enough. And I feel like I'm that way all the time. Okay, so that's the way that all goes. I think that about covers most of the map features. Now, one other feature I would say in regards to the map that I felt was a little bit of a hiccup was Switzerland. Switzerland is adjacent to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 territories. Now, Paris itself is only adjacent to 4. You have Vienna is adjacent to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Switzerland is probably one of the most, maybe not the most, but probably one of the most territories that's surrounded by how many did I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it's surrounded by 8. So looking at the map briefly, I don't think there's as many. It's probably the most populated or most surrounding territory with most adjacent territories, which means that it becomes a bit of a hub. In my limited experience in this game, it becomes a bit of a hub because it's such a nice place to sit your army there, and now you can strike out in each direction. I think European maps should be designed in such a way, or strategic maps should be designed in such a way that people don't want to go to Switzerland because it's inconvenient. The mountains there prevent you from moving out of it as easily, or something like that, and you can't strike too many adjacent territories from it. So this game has had an offshoot game. So Glenn Drover made another game called Victory and Glory. I haven't played it, but I really enjoyed the computer version of that game because it incorporated much of the rules of Napoleon in Europe in it. And in that game they had added a mountainous terrain between Switzerland and Tyrol, and I believe it was a few other ones, maybe Milan, and so you could not pass from Switzerland to Milan. And I like that idea quite well. It fixed a lot of the issues there as well. So Glenn Drover, through his video game, actually did quite well in that by changing Switzerland. I think that came after some a bunch of playtesting back, probably came up with that answer. All right, so that is what that looks like. There's a few things with naming conventions I probably would have changed, but honestly, minor issues, small potatoes, doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter at all. Now, what else are we looking at? Well, we see that there are ships here. This is not part of this game. This is part of Victory 2, another game spelt with a K, Victory. So I stole those pieces from here because I like having miniatures. Another thing you'll notice is the map gets crowded. Here, this is all sitting in Lorraine. And it's, the fine line between Lorraine and Belgium means that it's very crowded. And this is not, that's still, I would classify that as a medium-sized army. And you're going to have a few bigger armies marching around, which is why they supply you with these little task force unit kind of things, right? This itself has no combat value itself. It's just a representation on the map of a certain amount of units, so a task force essentially. And so in that case, you would lift off. So you put this guy here, a lot of people, they paint a numeral 1 on here, place him in Lorraine, and then grab whatever they have in Lorraine and put it here in the French spot. Maybe on a little card or something like that to really help them out. And that really works quite well in that case, and declutters the map. We'll get into miniatures momentarily, but here you have the representation of what's on the map. Red for Britain, obviously, Spain, yellow, blue, gray, purple up there for Prussia. Russia gets green, Ottomans get kind of a tan. Now, these colors are kind of similar, right? They're not enough apart. They need to be a little bit more. Now, what else do we have? We have these roundels. They control that area. They represent your nation's stuff. It's made of decently hard cardboard, so it's not going to cause an issue. They are double-sided too, so that's a nice little bonus as well. And that represents they control that territory. What else to add? I think that about covers it. You don't need to put tokens here because it's already in your color, but if the French or the Russians were to grab that area, then of course they would do that. All right, that is it for the pieces. Just a beautiful, beautiful map in my opinion. Excellent done. Despite my criticisms and opinions, they're just opinions. And of course, things can always be better. Everything can always be better. But honestly, that would come with its own set of problems. So I really like the map. I really like what it has to offer artistically. Just gorgeous and really well done. Excellent work, Mr. Paul Niemann. Yeah, Niemeyer. Sorry, Mr. Paul Niemeyer. Excellent work. All right. Now off we go to miniatures. I love miniatures. Miniatures are amazing. So I do have a few chit-based games, like Fatal Alliances, what's it called? World in Flames, and I quite enjoy them as well, but miniatures always have a special place in my heart. You have several colors here. We have, of course, it's all representative here, France, Prussia, Austria, Britain, the Ottomans, Russia, and Spain. You also have a lighter color here representing the kind of minor nations. So that's what that's all about. My nations are in light blue. Now, I think, and I'm going to just pull a stat out of thin air, but there are more men that have some level of color blindness than women, and I was surprised when I heard how much it was. And I can't remember what it was now, but it was something like 1 in 20 or something like that men are colorblind, whereas I think it's 1 in 40 or something for women, and I don't remember exactly. So for me, I'm a little bit colorblind where I can't distinguish quite well between green and blue. These, for me, I have no problem distinguishing. It's just they need to be closer in color, but it's getting close there for me. So that is, yeah, so that's just my 2 cents. Now, when it comes to other colors, you have like your blues. They're okay. You can distinguish between the two. But if they're in 2 separate shots, you say blue and blue. It really depends on the time of day, and you might forget what's where. Well, not usually, but you know, there's that chance. Same thing with the Austrians and the Ottomans. I mean, you squint a little bit and they look roughly the same, just the shading is slightly different. So that's the idea there. Otherwise, just beautiful. So these are the colors that the plastic pieces come into. And like was said on the box, what was it, 564, I believe, pieces of plastic. So that is brilliant. Let's go over the pieces and I'll show you what there all is. You have, of course, your artillery piece, your cannon. Now it's excellent. Now these wheels spin, which is beautiful. Some of them, they spin really, really nice. Yeah, you could just spin them and they'll just go. Beautiful. A little spinner there for the people who are a little impatient. So artillery is nice unit here for artillery. Next up we have, well, you have your task force marker unit. So we've already covered that a little bit, what its uses are. I found with this was a used pack, of course, board game. So I spent about $200, but I found a lot of them, since you need to kind of like shave it down nice and flat, since the base isn't super wide, and they can get a little tippy, not all the time, but you know, if you bump the table or have somebody who's a really enthusiastic dice roller, you know, you want to make sure that these sit pretty flat. What I would do if I had nicer roundels, which I do somewhere, I'd probably glue these on there to a nice kind of thick acrylic roundel. I think that would look quite nice, and then they'd have a nice firmer base to work with. What else do we have? Well, we have your basic unit type is going to be your infantry. Now I find these are gorgeous, 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 gorgeous pieces. So you have your infantryman. So this would be a fusilier. He would have a smoothbore musket that would be flintlock fired. Flintlock was around in varying stages for about 100 years, essentially. Before that, it was matchlock, but flintlock, you would have a little piece of flint that you'd attach to your musket, would hammer down, cause a spark, catch your gunfire, catch your powder on fire, and shoot. Sometimes there'd be a half second between you pulling the trigger and the gun firing. Your barrels would be quite a bit longer as well. This guy's barrel, you know, it would barely come up to, barely. So right there, come up to about there, including the bayonet. I think historically they function as almost, not quite there, but earlier on they functioned as almost halberds. So they were a little bit longer than that. Maybe not. Maybe I'm getting my facts wrong, but they were a little longer. Beautiful piece of work, though. I really like it. Now, plastic-wise, they are a little bit soft, which I don't mind soft plastic. But for those of people who like to paint plastic, then it's a little bit difficult. Now, I have here an Axis and Allies piece. These ones, the tensile strength or not tensile, but you get the plastic strength is firmer. This firmer than what we have here. Between a sword, this down here is also a little soft. You could feel like the base of it wants to go a little bit. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, it's Axis and Allies pieces are generally tougher plastic. Not for everyone, of course. The Japanese Axis and Allies are a little bit weaker plastic because they got long bayonets on their stuff. But yeah, generally softer plastic. Now, I've spoken before about this Victory game here. So I have other pieces from them, and you have pretty stiff plastic relative to that. The size comparison is a lot smaller. So if you're a painter, you probably wouldn't want to use this plastic. Well, you'd get annoyed anyways as it flakes off for the rifles. But yeah, for you have other options a person can get as well. So your infantry, there we have it. Nice shako in there, fantastic work. And if you really look in there, which I don't know if you can. Yeah, but you see this banding. Oops, you see this banding on his shako. There's diamond patterns on there, just quite nice. Now he has also a sword, which I don't think too many infantrymen carried swords, unless you were like a sergeant or something. And even then, I'm not too sure. You have elite infantry. You would have like your old grumblers, your grognards. You would have this bear skins, the old Napoleon's old guard. That's what these guys are. These guys, they stand a little nicer, I find, because they don't have this unbalance of this gun facing forward. But still really good. They have their sword there. Just excellent artistic work all around. Beautiful piece, excellent. Love it. He is not bearded, but he is mustachioed, so that is well worth noting. Extra points there. Next up we have, I'll show you the horses. My son just loved these horses. So 3 different types of horses. The plastic is a little bit stiffer on them maybe, but it's not going to break unless you really reef on that tail. But you won't have a reason to. You're not going to be fiddling around too much with the tail. You have 3 different colors. You have basically your commander's horse, heavy cavalry horse, and your light cavalry horse. That's essentially what it all is. And on that you can position your cavalrymen. So this guy here is carrying a shako and a sword, and he is gallivanting across the battlefield. Excellent fellow. Mustachioed, hard to tell, but you just plunk him down here, boom, and you have a light cavalryman of your color. So that way they save a little bit of money on mass producing these guys, and that's essentially what it is. I'm really looking forward to the other games by Glenn Drover, because just the pieces will be absolutely gorgeous. I'm really looking forward to it. Your heavy cavalryman is wearing a plumed metal cap. So this would be a cuirassier. He has a breastplate, a cuirass in front, but none. Oh, he does have one in the back. So I believe Napoleon got rid of the ones on the back because, well, he doesn't want his guys to be running away too often, and it also was cheaper. They were supposed to hold out against 3 musket shots from the front. That's kind of how they were tested, but oftentimes they would fail by this time in history. Muskets were just getting really too powerful. And you plunk him on his horse there. So I find these guys seem to stick a little bit better than these guys for some reason, which doesn't really matter because the light cavalrymen are not as good as the heavy cavalrymen. And you have your commander, and there you have it. Sword drawn, sauntering off there, his sheath sticking out to the side. Just brilliant. So this would be the cap used by, who used this kind of cap? Was it the bird? I guess everybody used it to some degree, I suppose. But yeah, there we have it. Yeah, so he has, he's sitting well in the saddle. There we go. So I really like the way that the conceptual designs behind the miniatures are absolutely gorgeous. Love what they have to offer. Now, brilliant work. Absolutely brilliant. They are bigger, so maybe I should demonstrate 2 for those of you that play Axis and Allies. You have your battleship here, so if I put it relative to that, you see that they're quite big relative to that battleship. Relative to your infantry, again, you're looking at a fairly large size. Your strat bombers are interesting to compare to your artilleries. They're quite big, and relative to your cavalry, fighters, you are you're looking at pretty big pieces on the board. But that's fine because you are actually having a lot of fun with the pieces, so it really doesn't matter the size of them because it's just an absolute pleasure regardless. Now here we have something else that they add to the game, which is these chits right here. Let's get you in a nice little position. So the chits you have your ship. This comes with the base game. Ships, now, my opinion is I would happily pay an extra $50 for a game to have these in miniature form. I really would. I really don't mind. So for the used game, I paid, I don't know, $200. I would happily have paid more for the extra options of having these. You have unrest tokens. You have light infantry. That would be the French dude as colored on the map. On the back side, you have horse artillery. Now, they're all different on the back, right? Here you have militia. Militia. And on the back, you have your irregular cavalry. And yeah, again, your horse and your light infantry, irregular, and your militia. Yeah, so it is the same. So yeah, there we have it. So that's what's represented there. Now, you won't get access, you won't be playing with these in the basic, in the basic you won't be playing with these, but in the advanced and the standard, you will, with some variety of these. But yeah, for the most part, you will in the advanced and the standard. So yeah, for the base game, for those that want to play the base game, you don't need to worry about it. But for those that like to play a little bit more with the advanced rules, yeah, then you're going to probably want to change these out. Now, I've seen some fantastic suggestions. So you know how you have your light infantry sitting on a brown horse? Well, they say if you put your light infantry on a gray horse, that can now become your irregular cavalry. And if you take off the wheels off of your regular cannon and switch it up for the wheels of, say somebody else, say the grays, you could exchange wheels, you now have your horse artillery. And so there are ways of getting around this. For instance, I might take my miniatures from Victory and say these are my militia, for the Austrians. And light infantry, unfortunately, I don't have anything, but I could always put, these guys right there. My regular cavalry could be these gray ones there. And you can make things work one way or another, patch pieces together, and kind of have a fun game. Now, I have talked about these ones. So that comes from Victory. I'm not trying to sell them. I'm not paid by them or anything. By the company that makes Victory stuff. Now you also start the game. So that deals with the miniatures at that point. Comes with bags and bags full of miniatures. Well, not bags. You have to bag it yourself. Sprues of miniatures, which you can bag and have this excellent load of stuff going on. So fantastic, beautiful pieces. Not a single thing I would change about them. They are absolutely gorgeous. All right, next up comes the cards. Now the cards come in 3 flavors. Let's just go over in this direction so we're less crowded. Less things going on. So the cards come in 3 flavors. You have a nice thick deck of them too, right? So you have your effect cards, your blue cards. You have your random events, and you have your innovation. And you would draw these at different times, and for different sets of games, you would do things differently. So for instance, the basic, you look at these lower numbers, and that's all you worry about. You ignore everything else. For the standard and the advanced, things change up a little bit. So innovation, so each turn, I believe, you draw a certain amount of cards. For each major battle you win, you might draw a card as well. And for at least the basic game, and so that's kind of how things go. So again, for the basic game, you don't look at anything else but the lower stuff down here. And the way that simply works is if you have, this stands for purple, like Prussian artillery, French infantry, and leader for Brits. And so if you have 3 of the same kind, like 3 infantry, doesn't matter what color, then you would get a brigade. But we'll get into that in the basic rules. In the advanced rules, you play your cards differently. Innovation will get you different tech advances, and now all your stuff, I believe it has to be at this date, now you get +1 on all your cavalry versus cavalry combat rolls. Your random events, you draw the card and you immediately have to play it because they're not going to be beneficial to you usually. Barbary Pirates, raid commence. Pick a randomly chosen card from your hand and place it back into the deck. So not so good. And effect, you basically hold on to these cards. Well, you hold on to both of these, but you hold on to these cards in the standard and advanced game and use it in, say, the battle. Now there's some that affect like the strategic map. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Strategic map. And so we'll say in little letters there. Great Britain gains 10 production points on the strategic map right there. Another one would be France loses 2 political action points and the like. So that's kind of what that's all about. All right. Political action points are something that we'll deal with later on, but don't worry your head too much about it. So that's what the cards offer you. Nice thick deck, lots of interesting stuff going on there. What else are you offered with? Well, you are offered with, or you are given or you purchase this, a tactical board. For me, this, when I saw this and realized what it meant, I fell in love with, well, maybe love is a bit of a strong word, but I really liked this game and really wanted to like it. I really wanted it to work, and for the most part, it really does. It does an excellent job. This battle board or battle map, your tactical battle board, it is fun. I enjoy it, but it also is the thing that is the biggest time sink in the game. So it ends up, this is where you have your games taking hours and hours long, especially with analysis paralysis and that kind of thing. It's basically divided into 3 wings, and if you win on one of these wings, you win the battle. That's essentially the long and short of it. Yeah, you move your artillery first, cavalry second, infantry last, and they both have a chance to use their action points to do stuff, and I believe your leaders go last. This is what you would use in your standard and advanced game, and so we're not going to deal with it too much now. You also have a rule set over here for your standard and advanced game. A well-worn rule set here with some combat modifiers, your cost for different units and that kind of thing. Fun, 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 fun. And lastly, you have up here, you have kind of a diplomacy tracker as well as a calendar tracker and production point tracker there as well. So that's well handy. And you see diplomacy can be at war with certain people and start off at war and make peace, etc., etc. So quite fun. Lastly, I don't know if I kind of covered this in a major way. You have your PAPs here, political action points, and so they have some utility as well, though not in the basic game. So I've covered all what the game has to offer. You have your cards, you have your miniatures, you have your battle board, you have your rule sets there, you have your beautifully artistic map, and you have your manual, and you have this fantastic artwork on the board itself. Just all together, for me, visual feast. I really like it and really want this one to work and to see some great things from it. So that is it, guys. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for the rest of the series where I deal with Napoleon in Europe and cover some of the excellent, beautiful things behind it, some of the things that could be a little bit better, and generally give you guys my thorough opinion about the whole subject. Thanks all. Cheers.